A2 economics need to be questions of A2 economics need to be answered. This is making sense, right? Okay. Now, first of all, you have to define what the short run is. So can you give me a definition for that?
It's a time period when at least one factor of production is constant, like it's not changing.
Right, exactly, perfect. So short run is the time period during which at least one factor of production is fixed, right? Okay. And we did talk about this, that most of the times it is the capital that is fixed because it's difficult to increase the quantities of capital. Okay, perfect. Now, this being said, and what is the definition of long run then? So if short run is the time period during which at least one factor of production is fixed, then what is short run? How do we define the term? Long run. How do we define the term? Long run.
When all the factors of production are variable.
Right. So long run is the time period after short run when all factors of production of a business are variable. Time period after short run. May I request you to kindly mute it and only open it when you have to speak, right? Because then obviously we're recording the classes so that it got, then it has a little distortion, right? Thank you so much. It is the time period after short run when all of the firm's factors of production are variable. Okay, now Zain, let me tell you what we're doing in today's class. You have missed some classes. I'll tell you how to, cover up for that, right? So we have all the recordings and all the material available that you can go over. And then later on, we can also have some extra classes. But what we're doing today, that we have already covered the topic of cost. So in the last few classes, we talked about the types of cost. This is the document that we have made in the process. So these notes will be available for you to study and, understand, and along with the video that is there on the YouTube, right? So what we're doing in today's class, we are doing a past paper question. So what we are doing a past paper question. Right. So all the lectures are available on the YouTube, right? If you have problem finding any topic on the YouTube, you can ask me. Okay. So read the question, right? And then we'll get started. So we'll do this question. And then I realized that we have not discussed what causes economies of scale. So we did talk about the factors that cause economies of scale, but we haven't written down the definition for these, right? So we'll cover off with that as well, which will be the end of this topic, which is types of cost. Okay. Now quickly read the question. Perfect. And just give me a minute, let me drink some water. Okay, Preet, thank you so much. So the question is talking about explain how the fixed and variable cost of a perfectly competitive firm affects its survival in the short and the long run. Okay, in short run, we have just explained that it is the time period during which at least one factor of production is fixed, right, which is usually the capital. And long run is the time period after that when all of the factors of production are variable, right? Yes or no? Okay, now think about this. Now, first thing that I'll ask you, how a firm makes a profit. How a firm makes a profit. What needs to hold true for a firm to make a profit? Are you guys getting me? So what criteria, what condition needs to hold true for you to know that the firm is making a profit? By now you would know, you have studied economics. Yeah.
When the prices are higher than the cost.
Right. Excellent, right? So very simply speaking, profit is basically calculated as when you subtract the cost from the revenue, right? So what you said is also correct, Preet, but you said price minus cost, but price is for one product, right? Price is for usually one product. On the other hand, revenue is basically the total amount that you generate from the sale of the goods. So if I say what was Mega Lectures revenue for this month, this means that the total combined fee that we receive from all of our students during this month, that was our revenue. Does this help? Zain, please, are you guys following? Right? So revenue, when revenue is greater than cost, it means the firm is making a profit. Right? Simple. Okay, but the story doesn't end over here. is making a profit. Another thing that you need to know. If I divide, now everyone, please, you have to be very careful. Now, Preet, I'm coming to what you were just about to say. If I divide this entire equation, if this entire equation, we have studied this equation multiple times, yes or no, right? In our AS, even in our O level. So we know what is profit. Profit is the money that you save. How do you save the money? So if you sell something for more than what it costs you to produce, right? So if there's a phone that Samsung is selling for 35,000 rupees and it costs them 20,000 rupees to produce, then they make a profit, right? Because they're selling it for a higher price compared to the cost of manufacturing that. Okay. If I divide this equation, can I do it like this, students? And you tell me if this can be done and this is mathematically true. So if I divide this entire equation with quantity, if I divide this entire equation, how many variables there are in the equation? There are 3 variables in the equation, right? So what I'm doing is basically I'm dividing the 3 variables with quantity. Now, what would that show you? So if you divide profit with quantity, so that would give you what? What would that give you? Zaim, Preet, can you tell me? So if I total profit divided by quantity will give me what? Who can tell me? What would be the word of that variable? What would be the word of that variable? Yeah. Come on, shouldn't be that hard. It will be, let's see if you got this, profit per unit. Excellent, right? So the profit per unit that you make is equals to what? Is equals to when you divide revenue with quantity. When you divide, when the entire revenue that the firm is making and you divide by the quantity. So this will give you technically the price. Yes or no? That will give you the price, right? Because revenue itself is price into quantity. Revenue itself, students, have a look at this. So when someone says to calculate the total revenue that the firm is making, right? So revenue is basically, let me choose a different color, right? So revenue is basically product of price. How much is the price of each unit of the good, right? Revenue is, forgive me about this, my writing pad, it's messing up a little bit, right? So price into quantity, this is what revenue is. And when you divide revenue with quantity, when you divide revenue over quantity, right? So that would obviously give you the price. Yes or no? Is it making sense? That will leave you with the price, right? So coming back to the point, coming back to our discussion over here. So profit per unit is equals to price minus, what is this? When you divide the total cost with the quantity, what does it give you? Cost divided by total quantity. What will it give you? We have studied this in the cost, right? So when you divide the total cost with the quantity, what is that? That is average total cost. Yes or no, students? Do you remember? Or have you forgotten already, right? So average total cost, because when you divide the total cost, when you divide the total cost with the quantity, obviously it will give you the ATC, right? Average total cost. ATC. Is it making sense? Right? Average total cost. Okay. Now coming back over here. Now what I did, I asked you initially how a firm makes a profit, and you were able to answer that simple question: revenue minus cost is your profit, right? Then what I did was to divide the entire equation with the quantity, right? Because it should not change anything. If you divide the entire equation with one constant or one variable, it keeps everything the same mathematically, right? So if you're dividing both sides of the equation with the same variable, it should, keep things the same. Now, what we learned, profit can also be calculated like this, right? Profit per unit is equals to price minus ATC. So that's the first thing. So if price would be greater than ATC, you will make a profit. If price is equals to ATC, you will not make a profit. And if price is less than ATC, you'll make a loss. Easy? We good on this? Okay. Now, this being said, we'll move on. Now, why was this discussion important? This discussion was important because the question is saying, explain how the fixed and variable cost of a perfectly competitive firm affects its survival in the short and the long run. Now, after the definition of fixed and after the definition of short run and long run, then you have to give the examiner a little bit of an overview of what is variable cost and what is fixed cost. Define fixed and variable cost, right? What's the next thing that you're doing? Defining fixed and variable cost, right? Now we already know the definition, so we'll not go over it all over again, but I'll just repeat it verbally, right? So fixed cost is any cost component that doesn't change with the level of output produced. So whether you produce more output or less output, your fixed cost stays constant, right? We know this. It is a straight horizontal line. It's a straight horizontal line, which you would remember, right? What is variable cost? Variable cost is the cost component that is directly proportional to the level of output produced. The more the output you produce, the more will be your variable cost. It is straight upward sloping line and it passes from the origin, right? It passes from the origin. What type of cost are variable costs? So simple example of that could be the raw material, right? So raw material, this is how the variable cost graph looks like. It starts from the origin, it passes through the origin. Okay, now this being said, after you've defined the fixed and the variable cost, now this is the main part of the question. In the short run, objective of the firm is only to cover its variable cost. I repeat this, right? Whereas in the long run, the firm its total cost. Okay, have a look at this. We're talking about a perfectly competitive firm over here, students. Please pay attention. So if you connect what perfectly competitive firm was, let me give you a little bit of an overview. We talked about this when we talked about economic efficiency. We said there are different type of markets, and one type of market is known as perfectly competitive market, right? In perfectly competitive market, what happens? There are a lot of firms that are producing the same product, exactly same product, homogeneous, we said, which means identical. These products are identical, and their prices are set by the market force of demand and supply. There is a lot of competition and so on and so forth. The example that we discussed for perfectly competitive market was agricultural goods. Why is agricultural market a good example of perfectly competitive market? Because if you think yourself, there's no branding, every product is the same. So whether you buy wheat from one city of your country or from the other city of your country, it will taste the same as long as it is produced in your own country, right? Might be minor differences when you import a product from another country, but generally the quality and the taste is exactly the same. There's no such brand that you can recall, right? That you can remember. When you go to a shop to buy, let's say, fruits, vegetables, all you say is the name of the product. You don't say this brand, that brand, until unless obviously it's branded, right? Juice is a different thing. I'm talking about raw fruits, raw vegetables, right? So this type of market is known as perfectly competitive market. Now, coming back to the point. Now, what have I written over here? Let's read this one more time. Since there is so much competition, students, since there is so much competition in perfect competition, that in the short run you would only want to cover your variable cost. Why? Think about this. Fixed cost is the cost component that is holding the same, that is staying the same, that is not changing, right? Now, as soon as a business starts, now think about this, students. Let's say you open up a farming business, right? In the farming business, you need some fixed cost. Like, let's say you have rented the land which you fertile, which you grow the crops on. Now uska jo rent, the rent that you have to pay on the land, that is fixed, right? The wages and the salaries that you might be paying to some of the workers that you have hired, that is also fixed, right? But what will be the variable cost? The variable cost would be the cost, let's say, of the seeds. The more the crop that you grow, the more the seeds you will need. Similarly, the more the crop that you grow, the more the insecticides and the pesticides that you need. Yes or no? These are the additional chemicals that you need to add to protect your crop from the pesticides, basically insects, right? You would know, right? So coming back to the point, Since there is so much competition in perfect competition, in the short run, the firm is only looking to cover its variable cost. Therefore, have a look at this. Therefore, if short run, the firm's, now this is the main part, the firm's price is greater than its average variable cost, will keep reducing. And right, and but for the long run, the firm needs its price to be higher than average total cost to survive. Okay, now let's understand what this statement over here means, right? I said in the short run, the firm is only trying to cover its average variable cost. Okay, think about this. If your price is greater than, have a look at this. SR stands for short run, right? So in the short run, if the price of the firm, the price at which you are selling the product is greater, right? You know the sign is greater than the AVC. What is AVC? AVC is average variable cost, right? Then you survive, right? I'll explain you how. And if in the short run, your price is less than, right? If your price is less than your AVC, then the firm quits. The firm quits the market. And the firm quits, right? Is it making sense? Now let's first talk about this. If you're not even covering the cost, if a business is not even covering the cost that it takes to produce that product, then why should it even survive? Let me give you a simple example for that. If there is a restaurant that sells the burger for 500 rupees and it costs the firm, right? It costs in the sense like the food items that you include in the burger, right? I'm talking about the variable cost directly associated with the production of the product. So if the meat and the burger and the bun and whatever goes, the ingredients, the food ingredients I'm talking about, if the food ingredients to manufacture that burger is for 550 rupees, how much you're selling it for? 500. How much are the ingredients costing you? 550. I'm not talking about the wages. I'm not talking about the fixed expense. I'm just talking about the variable expense. So if the variable expense is 550 and you're selling it for 500, do you think it's even a good idea to even survive in the short run? Should you continue operating in that market or should you quit? That's my question. Think about this and then answer me, right? Yes, no, you should quit the market because you're exactly very good. Excellent. You should quit the market. Why? Because you're not even, right? Are you following me? You're not even covering your variable cost. You're not even covering your variable cost because, right? Similarly, let me give you another example. So if a phone producing company, right, sells the phone for 20,000 rupees, right? Phone manufacturing company is selling the phone for 20,000 rupees, and just the components that go into manufacturing of that phone cost you 25,000 or 23,000 rupees. Now the variable cost is higher than the price, and you can never expect to get profitable even in the longer run. So it doesn't make sense. So it's not like you will start producing more output and you will be able to cover your cost. No, your price is too low to even cover your variable cost at this point in time. No firm